Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the next Foreman Community Demo. It's your host, Ken Gilvin here, as always, coming to you live from an even noisier building site than I have been for the last couple of months because my contractors just took away the door to my study. So I do apologize if it's a bit noisy from my microphone today. I will try and keep my interference to a minimum. Apart from that, though, we have a packed show for you as always, and you can get involved as always. Come jump on IRC, Freenode, #theforeman, ask your questions, get involved. I'll be watching and I'll pass your questions on to the presenters. We've got a fair bit to cover. 1.15 is not quite released. It was supposed to be released by now. I believe the pipeline jobs are all finished and we're just waiting for Daniel to do the final tests and confirmations and post it to the announce list. But pretty much, if you're not watching this live, it's probably out. And I will just quickly cover the main high points in just a moment. We're going to have a Red Hat Summit Roundup from one of the people who's there. Sadly, I couldn't make it this year, but apparently it was a lot of fun. We've got quite a lot of Hammer content today. We've got some stuff on Foreman Maintain and a last-minute addition that didn't make the slide. We've also got some stuff on the host actions as well. So lots to cover. Talking about 1.15, there's if you haven't already seen much of what's going on in 1.15, we've covered a lot of it in previous demos, but the headlines are the notification drawer, which is going to be amazing. We're looking forward to seeing what people do with that in plugins. So you'll have a little drop down with important information as notifications. We've got CSV exports. We've got proper importing of hosts from compute resources. We've got template locking, which is going to be interesting to see how people react to that. And role locking as well. It basically gives us a way of smoothly updating templates because we found that most people don't really update their templates. Like they use the ones from us and they're happy with that. And so rather than have to deal with whether or not a template is broken or been changed, we're just locking them and saying, right, we will update these ones and you can copy them if you want to change them. So this is going to be interesting to see how people react to that. We've got SSH keys for users, which is fabulous, and also default owners as well, which they kind of go together. So you've got a default owner and an SSH key there for all your hosts being built. Lovely. And lots of small stuff as well. So it's going to be a really exciting release. I'm looking forward to getting it deployed in my production setup. And we really want to hear your feedback about how you find it as well. So that's 1.15 coming your way any minute now, basically, but I'll stop talking about that. And so instead, we're going to talk about Summit. Now, it was supposed to be Chris Pisano, one of our community guys who was there, who's going to talk about this. Sadly, Chris can't be with us. He had a last-minute call out. And so he is instead going to be replaced by Andra, who was also there. And he's going to tell us all about how Summit was. So, Andra, how was Summit?
Well, Summit was pretty busy. I was at the booth mostly in the afternoons, and I must say we were lucky that Chris was there. He did a great amount of work talking to people. People are asking about a lot of things, but the one thing that they were interested in about most was Ansible. And how will Foreman work with Ansible? How is the work on Ansible progressing, and so on? They were very interested in our demo, and our demo boxes were great. So thanks to Tomáš who prepared them. And yeah, people are asking a lot of questions about Foreman. They were really interested, and I think they were very, very happy to see us. Is there anything in particular you're interested in?
How are the new T-shirts? Do people like them?
Yeah, people like them.
Do they look good? I had to do that blind, so I didn't really get a sample or anything ahead. So does the new base color work?
Yeah, it works very well. Some
Fabulous.
People even said that they are even better than the previous version.
Wow, okay. Well, that's a challenge for next year. So for those of you who are awaiting T-shirts, as you know, I tend to notable contributors, I tend to send out T-shirts from time to time. And also the community survey prize winners still haven't got theirs. So you'll all be getting T-shirts out of this batch. So apparently you're getting the best T-shirts yet, which suits me fine. So the demo is good. So Ansible was part of the demo. You had a full sort of stack there, didn't you? So it was yeah. Foreman, Catello, Ansible, Discovery, remote execution.
Yeah, as well. Basically all the major plugins.
Cool. Okay. And so Ansible was definitely top of that list. Was there anything else that was notable people asking about?
Well, there were a lot of various questions from various areas. One question that caught my attention and that was unique, I would say, was about smart proxies. One guy wanted to deploy a smart proxy as a standalone, just without Foreman server, and he wanted to was interested in Facts API. If we will add API for Facts into the smart proxy, so he could deploy the smart proxy on his own and just query the API for Facts from hosts. So that was kind of interesting.
So I could give you two pieces of information there, a bit late, I guess. So firstly, from the community survey earlier in the year, we know that there's actually about 10% of people who responded to the survey said they have some standalone proxies that aren't used with Foreman, which I thought was huge, actually. 10% is huge, right? So now that might be a bit skewed, I don't know. But even so, it seems like it's not a really minor use case, which is really interesting. And it tells us we have to be very careful with changing APIs and things like that. But the second thing is there is already a Facts API there, actually. I hope you told him that. I think it might even be enabled by default. I can't remember. I know we changed it a while back. But yes, you can query /facts on a proxy and get the facts back.
That's awesome.
And of course, it's extensible, which I'm sure you told them as well. So for those of you out there who don't know, the proxy can be run standalone. You can just use it as a REST API to access various services. And of course, because it's pluggable, you can always add modules to it to do other things that you're interested in. So for example, there's a really cheeky little module in the Discovery plugin for the Smart Proxy, which allows us to reboot discovered hosts. That's all it does. It just shells out and runs reboot. At least that's how it used to be. I'm sure Lukash has made it much, much better since, but that was how the original version worked. Okay, I'm just going to quick check see if anyone's got any Summit questions, but I don't see any right now, so it's fine. So thank you for that, Andre. And in general, people, if you're going to be at conferences, so for example, I know right now there's a conference going on in Bangalore in India where we've got a little bit of a presence, so I might see if I can get Anurag to come talk about that later. If you're going to be at a conference, if you think Foreman should be there, or if you're going to submit like talks to call for presentations and things like that, please do get in touch with me and let me know what you're up to, because I'll be happy to feature things like this and to talk about them and to give you a bit of promotion and that kind of thing. So on the subject of events as well, we have the Foreman birthdays coming up in July. Last year we had 8 events in a month. I'm going to be doing the same again. I am looking for speakers in whatever area you may be in, but definitely going to need some in Belgium, definitely going to need some in Germany, hoping to need some in Israel and the US as well. So again, do get in touch if you want to be a part of that. All right, thanks, Andre. Let's move on. So let's actually have some content. Let's stop just chit-chatting and actually see some code and some features, right? So Ivan, Foreman maintain, what's new there?
Okay, hello. So I'll just share my screen if I figure out how to do it again. Okay, here we go. So I hope you can see some terminal there.
Yep, that's fine.
Cool. So a lot of things were happening. In the meantime, we haven't did the demo last time, but so for those that hear this for the first time, the Foreman maintain is a tool that tries to unify the tooling around keeping the Foreman and the related projects up and running, and help the people that actually run the thing to make sure that everything is running smoothly. This is the area that we are not that good at this moment. So, and the first area that we are focusing on is the actually upgrades. Right now, well, I will show this how this helps with the upgrades of the satellite, which is the version of the Foreman we deliver as part of the Red Hat, but the same tooling should be usable for the upstream Foreman as well. So it's Foreman maintain. One thing is that it's the kind of infrastructure for defining these kind of things, and the second part is the definitions themselves that can differ from version to version.
Just before you continue, Ivan, I've just remembered, for those watching live, do remember to upgrade the settings. If you click on the settings for the broadcast, you can change the definition, and that will make it much, much easier to see terminals and UIs and things like that. For some reason, YouTube broadcasts, live broadcasts default to a very low stream quality. So do change that, and then this will be a much more pleasant experience. Sorry, Ivan, do carry on.
Oh, okay. So last time we showed you some basic stuff, like when I run Foreman maintain upgrade check, it will tell me like which versions I'm actually able to upgrade from what I'm actually running right now. And since I'm running, this is the downstream version, I see the downstream numbers here. So I will run the checks for 6.2 because I'm on 6.1 and I want to upgrade that. So the first thing that happened here is that, or what we edit is that some of the checks that we define require some additional packages that are not present at the moment. And we allow to install this, or we ask you to install it before continuing with the process. So this makes it easier to add the checks that have some dependencies, and we don't have to like deal too much with the packaging, as well as we can use the same code outside of the satellite or the Foreman server, and we don't need to install the packages as part of the dependencies in that case. So that's one of the reasons why we have these preparation steps. So, and now then the checks actually run to check the disk speed that we are running right now, and if it's suitable for running the actual production instance, or we need to disable some sync plans before we upgrade. So that's one thing that we edit. Another thing, as part of the scripts, we actually need to call hammer at some point to set, for example, the synchronization plans on the catalog and so on. So, and it would be not the best idea to ask for the credentials every time we need to use the hammer command in this scripting. So another thing that we have there as part of the preparation is when I run the check again, and now I will simulate that the hammer is not configured yet. It asks me to actually set up the hammer with the credentials so that I don't have to enter it again. So this defaults to admin as the username and super secret password entered. And it informs me that the new settings were saved here. So we use custom configuration for the hammer to actually store these credentials. If you don't like it, you can move it after that. We also try to set the permission correctly, that it should not be world or group readable and so on. So then you see that we have something like that, some suggestions to do before we actually go to the upgrades. I will still go no here. So that's one thing. You should also notice when I remove the dependent package again, that first time that I was installing that or running that command, it asked me if I want to actually install that or not. And it would be nice if I could say, or the default option to yes or assume yes, that we know from commands such as yum. So if you look at the help of the Foreman maintain, there's actually the assume yes or the -y option. So in that case, if I run the check again for the 6.2 and use the -y option, and I need to do it here because of the prime, then nothing will ask me anything, and it will try to do its best to proceed with the steps in a way that actually works. So the disk speed will still fail because I have tweaked the server a bit so that, or the script a bit so that it always fails, just to have it more colorful. So one thing that you can also notice that when I use the -y option, and there were some enabled sync plans, it actually also disabled the active sync plan so that I can continue with the upgrade. So now it says that some checks fail, but it offers me to continue or not. So this will be helpful, and I promised in the description that I will show the end-to-end scenario for the Foreman maintain upgrade. So without, or instead of running the check, I will now do upgrade run, which will not just do the pre-upgrade checks, but it will also continue with the post-upgrade. So if you are interested to know the scenarios or the phases that we are defining here. So we have the pre-upgrade checks. This should happen without us touching anything on the system before any non-revertible changes actually happening. Then there should be some pre-migration steps where you actually would do things like disabling the sync plans and basically setting up the maintenance mode so that you can safely proceed with the upgrades without interfering with the rest of your infrastructure while you're running the migrations. Then the migrations themselves, including the installer run and so on, some post-migration changes if you need, and at the end, making sure that the system is sane again by running the post-upgrade checks. So these are the 5 steps that we can proceed with, and what will be part of the checks depends on what version is actually installed at the moment, which we have the detection and we already talked about on one of the previous demos. So now I can see that the check before upgrading the satellite 6.2 failed, and I can either say, okay, no, I will fix that and proceed again later, or if I'm really sure what I'm doing, I can go with yes. And since I don't have any migration steps defined just yet, so what happened is that it's switched or jumped directly to after upgrading steps, which again checked for some post-upgrade steps, and you can remember that we disabled one sync plan at the beginning. So right now we enabled that back again, so that we can just proceed. So this is pretty much it in terms of the full end-to-end scenario. So what's important to know is that every check, and I can show you some of the check definitions. For example, the disk speed minimal can have now some preparation steps, such as install packages that needs to be present. You can also use the hammer, and we will handle asking the user for the credentials and so on. And there is the -y option to streamline the process when something needs to be fixed, and we can just assume that the user wants this to be fixed. And the last thing is that we can now put multiple scenarios together and run something more useful, such as running the pre-upgrade checks, then the pre-migrations, post-migrations, and the post-upgrade checks. So some of the things are already merged. Some of them are, you are the first ones to actually see them. So more things will come, but this is where the direction that we are taking right now. So that's pretty much it from my demo. There is also additional checks were added in the meantime, but I will not talk about them. You can just check the source code for that, and we'll have the repository moved into the Foreman organization soon. So that's pretty much it from me. Any questions?
No, not at the moment. So apart from class pointing out that your assume yes didn't assume yes for one of your commands, but anyway, so that's there's not actual questions apart from class trolling you. So thanks. Who's going to take us through all the wonderful changes that have been necessary to get SSL support in Hammer. So Martin, you there, Martin? You're on mute at the moment.
Yeah, hello.
Hey, there you are.
I'll share my screen. Okay.
Yeah, that's working fine.
So, I'd like to demo the new SSL stuff that was added to Hammer recently. The most biggest part of the contribution was done by a community user. And so we very appreciated that, because this is a demanded feature. And I'm also, and I'm going to show you what are the changes now. So first of all, there were some new parameters that are used to set up SSL verification during the Hammer communication with the server. And I'll show you the list. So this is filtered the parameters from the help of Hammer. And if we go through them briefly, it's fetch CA cert, which is option that helps you with downloading the CA certificate from the server. I'll demo that later. Then there is a CA file, which is option that just pass the CA certificate to the server for verification. You can also use CA path, which is similar, but it's pointing to directory with CA certificates. It needs to have the format that is required by SSL, which means that there are the certificates also with their links that are named by hash of the subject of the certificate. This is format required by SSL, and there are tools on the internet available to generate the right links. And there is also another option, SSL client cert and client key, which are used for client certification, client authentication by certificates. And also the option SSL with basic auth can be used with that if you want to use the client certificate just for authorization and authentication will be done by standard basic auth with username and password. And there is also verify SSL that can turn the SSL verification on and off. All these options can be also set in configuration. It is in the basic Hammer configuration, not in the Foreman plugin, and I will show you. It's in home directory, in directory.hammer, in CLI config YAML, and there is a whole SSL section that contains all the certificates that all the options that we talked about before. So with these changes, we also introduced change to how Hammer behave, and this is caused by verify SSL being turned on by default. So now if it is released in 1.15, so if you want to connect to the server for the first time with the 1.15, and there is the CA certificate is not in your system certificates, you will be notified with error that the SSL verification didn't work. I can show you. I have a box that I didn't downloaded the server CA certificate into my system, and I was notified that the verification failed. And there is also some information how to obtain the certificates. Basically, it's best if you download that certificate manually and check that it is the right certificate that you want to trust. But we also have option in Hammer to help you with that, and that is the fetch CA cert option. Fetch CA cert option downloads the certificate chain from the server and extract the top certificate from that, and in the 1.15 it prints it on the standard output. So you have to copy paste it to some file and configure Hammer manually, or you can store it to the system trust. This is not very user friendly, so we've introduced new update which will be released hopefully in 1.15.1, and it helps you to keep some store of CA certificates for which you don't need to be root user, and Hammer is looking to the store if there is a certificate that it can use for SSL verification. The store is by default stored in .hammer/certs. I can show you how it looks inside. Yeah, so there is one cert for another box, and if I will follow the directions and download the certificate from the server, Hammer will download it and print some instructions and store the certificate to the store, as you can see here. In the instruction, you can see where the certificate was stored on the system, and also how you can check what it contains, and also in the last part how you can install the certificate into the system trust, but you need to be a root user for that. So we've downloaded the certificate, and if I retry communicate with the server, it should work. So the server responded, and the SSL verification worked well. Yeah, so that's about it, about the changes in SSL in Hammer, and I'm going to pass to another speaker if there are no any questions.
Thanks very much, Martin. That looks really good. That last bit about installing the certificate in the system trust, is that applicable only to certain OSs? Does that work for your OS? Does it know which OS you're on and give you the appropriate instructions, or is it hard coded to a specific OS?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Thanks for that. Hammer tries to find out how your CA certificate store looks like and what implementation you use, and tries to put the right instruction if you are on Red Hat based system or on Debian system. So the instruction will change according to your system.
Good. That's really cool. That's good to know. Okay, I don't see any other questions for you just now, so thanks very much for that, Martin. So moving on, we're going to have Tomasz, who's also going to give us a little bit more update on new things in Hammer. So Tomasz, you there?
Yes, hello. I just turned my terminal, so hopefully you can see it now.
Yeah, that's looking fine. So on you go.
So a few months ago, Hammer received support for sessions, which is very useful when you don't want to store your password or even username in a configuration file, and it helps you with not entering it on a command line each time you trigger some Hammer command. So it was a big and nice improvement. By default, it's turned off. So if you want to give it a try and play with this feature, make sure that you edit your config file and turn it on. And the original solution had one issue. We just didn't have didn't have retry implemented when the session expires, which happened quite often because by default the session timeout is 1 hour. So typically you play with Hammer, trigger some commands, then do something else, and then when you get back to Hammer, the commands used to fail. The first command used to fail because the session expired in the meantime. So I'll show you the previous state first so that you can compare difference. When I do Hammer OS paste, I'm picking a random command. doesn't matter which one you use. You see that the session is active and the command was successful. I'll use my little helper to expire the session. And now when I do hammer OS list, the command fails, which is not very user-friendly. The next attempt would ask me for password. And when I enter it, it just works as it should. So the recent change, I'm going to check out now. When I do some command, and then when the session expires, the command, when I trigger it again, won't fail, and it should ask me for the password, which happened just now. And when I enter it, it will proceed. So what happens in the background is that when the first response from the server is that the session has expired and the command failed, it actually tries to run the command again, and next time it asks for the password so that you can renew the session. That's about it for now.
All right. Thanks very much, Tomasz. Well, feedback, hit yourself. So thanks for that, Tomasz. That's really, really great. It's just one of those paper cut issues that you just want to get it fixed, right? You just want to get it out of the way. It's annoying. It's not like major high impact, but it just gets on your nerves every time. So really good to see that fixed. Really, really nice. Moving on. There's no questions. I wouldn't really expect a lot of questions on that. It's a thing that works, right? So Amir, then, multiple hosts, new things for multiple hosts. What do you got for us?
Hey guys, just a sec. I'll share my screen. Can you see it?
Yep, that's there.
Excellent. Okay, so I'll show you a small feature which allows you to select all hosts for a bulk action. So let's demo it. If I want to choose all of these hosts, I just click on that checkbox. And as you can see, this alert pop out. And if I want to select all my hosts, not just the total 10 hosts, I just select them. And I can undo if I want, but I can select them. And then I choose a bulk action. Let's demonstrate for change owner. You can see the notice here that which reminds us that we selected 10 hosts. So, even with a filter, so let's demonstrate this. Let's go for organization. And hosts, so let's select those 9 hosts. And let's choose bulk action. And we can see we have this alert, which reminds us we have 9 hosts, which selected for query filter organization equal to dev. That's it. Any questions, guys?
That is really, really nice. No, I don't see any questions, although you were really, really quick. So yeah, I don't see there's a lot of questions for that. It's really nice. It's just, I guess this is really at its best when you have a lot of hosts, right? When you need to do some big update. So yeah, really, it makes me think of Gmail. I used to do that so often, like select everything in this folder. So yeah, really, really nice to have. Okay, so thanks for that, Amir. Great stuff. And finally, Tomasz, back again, wants to tell us a little bit about a new incubator he's setting up.
Yeah, I'm back again, and I would like to introduce you a new Hammer plugin that I created recently. It's called Hammer CLI Experimental, and the intention is that it should be an incubator for random, not mature enough extensions. I guess that you know it. You get an idea, quickly code a prototype, and the code is dirty, and then you don't have enough time and power to finish it. So it usually results in the code rotting somewhere in your branch forever, and you never publish it. Also, it often doesn't make sense to spend more time on such feature unless you're sure that other people like it. So Hammer CLI experimental repository should be the right place for such code where people can test it, developers tune it, and then when it gets enough support, we can merge it into core. Unfortunately, this repository isn't published yet because I didn't manage to write the README on time, but I promise to do that soon, and I will send an email with all the links on mailing list anyway. So don't worry, you will get it soon. At the moment, the repository or the plugin contains 4 features. The first thing is config command. By the way, I created an alias Hammer, so don't be confused. It's just Hammer with some specific configuration that enables the plugin so that I can switch on and off with normal Hammer and the experimental plugin. So the config command is useful for debugging. It can print you current configuration of Hammer. So when you're not sure what you set in the configuration and where it's set, or if some of the configuration files is corrupted, it's not valid YAML or anything, you can easily find out what's wrong using this command. So first option is paths. That will just print the paths to configuration files in the order in which they were loaded. You can see that the last one is the experimental YAML, which actually enables the experimental plugin for me. Another option is to use -show, which will print the whole configuration as it was loaded. It's everything merged together, and this is the config that Hammer gets and uses when it's triggered. So, and when you find that there's something wrong, you can probably, or you probably want to find a configuration file that sets the value. You can do it by using show by path, which also gives you a list of configurations, but it prints you the file where it comes from and what the file contains. So when you're looking for a certain value, which configuration file sets it, this is to give you the answer. Another feature is something a couple of people asked me about, and I call it fuzzy subcommands. So in traditional Hammer, you have to always write the full name of a subcommand, which is sometimes quite long. For example, it's not very pleasant to write organization every time when you want to list it. So fuzzy subcommands allow for using shortcuts. So you can use hammer org list, and it will find the correct command and print it. You can use any shortcut that you want, as long as it matches just one command. If I used xhammer and just HO, which could be host group or host list, hammer will fail, saying no such subcommand because it won't find anything. This feature works across the whole CLI, regardless which plugin it comes from. So I can use it also for catalog and use prod instead of products. And it should give me the list. Yeah. Another change that this feature adds is using aliases for the terminal commands. We often use index and show, or we actually use list and info. And a lot of people try to write index and show, especially Rails developers. And I do it at least twice a week that I put it wrong. So this feature adds aliases. And you can do OS index as well as OS list, and you can also do OS show as well as OS info, and both get you the same command. The third feature is highly experimental, therefore I've got it disabled by default in my setup. So I'm going to enable it now. And it's better formatting for help. Some of the commands have their help output quite longish, especially host create or update actions. I do hammer host create. You can see that there's a lot of options, and a lot of them are quite the same or very similar. There's a lot of duplicities for associated resources like operating system and operating system IDs, which I sometimes find quite confusing because everything starts with the same resource name, and there's simply a lot of content. So this change adds a little bit of rich text formatting. It adds colors and squeezes the options into one where it's possible, using this syntax with square brackets. So there's dash compute profile as well as compute profile dash ID, and it can squeeze multiple options into one, like here host group title or host group ID or just simply host group, and it makes the help output nice and short, or at least shorter. But this is just a prototype to actually, I used it mainly to discover what would be needed in Hammer to implement it clean, because at the moment the code is really dirty and it's not production ready at all. So that's why I will just disable it again. The last thing I wanted to show is the fourth feature from the experimental plugin, and it's a full help command into the whole list of all commands and subcommands in Hammer and their options. It has two formats. One is some simple plain text, just gives you some headings, and then prints you the help, and you can see that here is the tree of the commands. Another option is to use Markdown for that, and when you use Markdown, it gives you the list of commands, even with some table of contents and at the very top, and then very similar output. I find it useful mainly when you're changing API and when you want to check if you change something, so you can print full help before your API change, after API change, and then do the diff and see which commands changed on Hammer CLI, because sometimes it's quite difficult to take control of what you actually changed when there's everything so dynamic in Hammer. And this is the last thing I wanted to show you. It's output of the full help command in Markdown, pasted into gist. So you can see there's the table of contents, and when I click, for example, the location, it gets me to the main command, and I can see all the subcommands down below. So that's about it from my side. Any questions?
Ooh, yes, so many questions. So the first one I think is fairly obvious. The fuzzy subcommands. Obviously, the many tools out there that do this tend to show you what the possible matches are when you specify something that's got multiple completions, right? So host or host group. I presume you intend to add that.
Yes. The reason why it's not there is just because it was too complicated to finish it at one evening.
Sure, it makes sense.
That's exactly intention of this plugin. So we can collect ideas, people can contribute.
Let's ask a more serious question. How do you see the progression here? I assume you've got some idea of roughly how long you would want features to sort of bake in here, or how do you want to drive kind of collaboration? How do you get feedback on these features, right? Is this something you intend people to kind of run from Git and just add to their Hammer setup to play with?
So yeah, I expect that developers that are interested in the features just check out the plugin or install the plugin and start using it. And I haven't decided yet on how we do the final votes on what gets merged into core. So this is open, but I think it can be in form of, I don't know, GitHub issues or some other votes on mailing list. So sure. time to time, when I guess that when we see that some of the features are mature enough, we can start discussion whether it makes sense to cherry pick it into core.
Sure, makes sense. You're actually ahead of core here, right? Because despite all our good intentions, we've still never merged a plugin into core, right? So, so it'll be interesting to see if you get there first. What was the other thing I was going to say? I guess, is this mainly aimed at developers? Do you want kind of end users to play with this as well and give you their feedback? I guess I asked that question because I'm interested in end users aren't so likely to do this from Git, right? So you would then have to like release it, and then you've got all the versioning fun and all that kind of nonsense, right?
Yeah, I actually the intention at the moment isn't to package it into RPM or Debian. I will for sure release it as Jamp. So end users, if they're interested, can install it. Hopefully, the README file will provide clear enough instructions of how to install it. And the rule in the repository is that everything can be enabled or disabled. So everything is disabled by default. So if an end user is interested in one of the features, it can simply install it, enable just the particular feature, and test it. So even when it's all experimental and it comes without any warranty, it should be quite safe to use just parts of it.
Sure. Cool. That's a good idea. I really like the full help thing, because it's kind of like the API pie stuff we have for core, right? So you can actually self-document and all that kind of thing. It's really nice. Good. Okay. Well, that I think brings us to the end of the demo. I don't have anything else to say, I don't think. We've had all our presenters. Thank you very much to all our presenters today for taking their time to come and talk to us. I haven't said this for a while, so I'll just go through the details. You can find us on Freenode, #theforeman, on YouTube, +Foreman, Twitter, Foreman Project. Do give us your feedback. I am interested to know what content you like, what you'd like to see more of. Give us those +1s, those thumbs ups, or drop me a note on one of the various mediums to tell me what you'd like to see more of, because it really helps me schedule these things. But in the meantime, for today, thank you very much for watching, and do take care.